The first thing that shattered wasn't the glass on the kitchen counter. It was Nathan's illusion of control. He had built his life on control, on numbers, on contracts, on the reassuring weight of his last name engraved on the frosted doors of his Manhattan investment firm. He was 36, sharp in tailored navy suits, his hair always styled, his schedule always full. At home in their upscale townhouse in Westchester, he moved like a guest, not a husband. And his wife, Hannah, had long ago learned to step aside from the cold wind of his ambition. That morning sunlight streamed through the wide kitchen windows, bright and honest. Hannah, 32, with long chestnut hair falling in soft waves over a simple black sweater, stood at the Marble Island slicing strawberries for a salad she wasn't sure he would even touch. She had once dreamed of becoming a painter. Now her hands moved mechanically between bowls and plates, as if routine could replace affection. Nathan barely looked at her. He scrolled through emails, brow furrowed, the glow of his phone reflecting in his distant eyes. Their marriage had become a silent agreement, comfort in exchange for companionship. He provided everything money could buy. She provided presence. But presence without attention is just loneliness in disguise. What if this happened to you? If you gave your whole heart to someone who only noticed you when something threatened to take you away, how long would you wait before your love quietly began to fade? Nathan reached for a glass of water and knocked it over. As Hannah quickly grabbed a towel, her phone lit up on the counter. A message preview appeared before the screen dimmed. I miss you already. Last night meant more than you know. Marcus. The world narrowed. He stared at the words, his pulse roaring in his ears. The room felt smaller, suffocating. Marcus. A name he didn't recognize. His chest tightened with a kind of pain he had never known in boardrooms or negotiations. Without thinking, he grabbed her phone. Hannah turned, confusion shifting to alarm as she saw his expression. Nathan's jaw clenched so hard it trembled. The phone felt like a weapon in his hand. He wasn't prepared for the storm that rose inside him. Not because he loved her deeply in the way poets describe, but because he had never imagined she would step outside the boundaries he assumed were unbreakable. She was his wife. His life. His certainty. He scrolled further, heart pounding. The messages were warm, emotional, intimate. They spoke of laughter in a quiet coffee shop in Brooklyn. Of long walks in Central Park. Of feeling seen. Seen. Nathan felt something crack open inside him. He hadn't seen her in years. Rage came first. A blinding, humiliating rage. He imagined Marcus, whoever he was, touching the woman he had promised to protect. His breathing grew heavy, erratic. For a moment, he lost himself entirely, consumed by a jealousy so fierce it frightened even him. But beneath the rage was something worse. Fear. Fear that he had already lost her long before this message appeared. Hannah stood frozen, her eyes filling not with guilt alone, but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that builds slowly over years of being unheard. Nathan noticed it then, the faint shadows under her eyes, the way her shoulders curved inward as if bracing for impact. In that fragile silence, he was forced to confront a truth he had buried under luxury cars and investment portfolios. He had neglected the one person who had once believed in him before the money, before the fame. He remembered their tiny apartment in Chicago when they were newly married. The cheap couch. The late-night takeout. The way she would wait up for him during his first grueling months at the firm. She had believed in his potential when all he had was debt and ambition. Somewhere along the climb, he stopped reaching back for her hand. The days that followed were heavy and raw. Nathan didn't scream. He didn't threaten. Instead, something inside him shifted. He began to see the house differently. The silence at dinner. The empty space in their bed when he came home past midnight. He learned that Marcus was a high school art teacher. 34. Divorced. Not wealthy. Not powerful. Just attentive. The humiliation burned. How could a man with so little offer her something Nathan hadn't? But the real question was harder: why had she needed to look elsewhere at all? Hannah didn't defend herself with excuses. She admitted she had felt invisible. She said she had tried to tell him, gently at first, then desperately. She had asked for dinners together, for weekends without his phone, for conversations that lasted longer than 5 distracted minutes. He had always promised, after this quarter. After this deal. After. Always after. Nathan began coming home earlier. At first, it felt unnatural, like stepping into a life he had abandoned. He sat at the kitchen island while she cooked. He asked about her day. His voice was awkward, unpracticed. He expected forgiveness to arrive quickly, like a signed contract. It didn't. Trust, once cracked, resists easy repair. Hannah had ended things with Marcus the day Nathan found the message. Not because she was caught, but because seeing her husband unravel shook her. She hadn't wanted to destroy him. She had only wanted to feel alive again. Nathan started therapy alone at first. For a man who prided himself on strength, admitting emotional failure felt like defeat. But week by week, he uncovered uncomfortable layers of himself. The insecurity that drove him to chase success. The childhood memory of his father losing everything and vowing never to feel powerless again. He realized he had confused providing with loving. Months passed. There were setbacks. Cold evenings. Lingering suspicion. But there were also small, fragile moments of rebuilding. Shared breakfasts. A spontaneous weekend trip to Vermont where they walked beneath bare autumn trees and spoke honestly for the first time in years. One evening, Nathan found Hannah in the spare room she had quietly turned into a studio. Canvases leaned against the wall, streaked with color and pain and hope. He stood there watching her paint, truly watching, and something in his chest softened. He didn't know if they would fully recover. Marriage, he learned, is not secured by wealth or vows alone. It requires presence. It requires humility. The man who once would have lost his mind in fury now feared losing her in silence far more. Sometimes, late at night, he would lie awake thinking about that message. Not with rage, but with gratitude for the brutal awakening it forced upon him. It had exposed not just her loneliness, but his own emptiness. Love is not a possession. It is participation. And if you were in Nathan's place, would you fight with anger, or would you fight to become better? Before this story ends, take a moment and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Hannah's place? Nathan never became a different man overnight. But he became a more present one. He learned to sit beside his wife without a phone in his hand. To listen without planning his next meeting. To hold her not out of ownership, but gratitude. Their marriage bore scars, but it also grew roots deeper than before. Sometimes it takes almost losing someone to understand what they were worth all along.